Welcome to the University of the District of Columbia and Mayor Bowser's 2019 State of the District Address. Please stand for the National Anthem, performed by the Eastern Senior High School Choir, and the presentation of colors by the Columbia Heights Education Campus Navy Junior ROTC.
Ready, go. Footwork, arch. Hold. Left turn, arch. Boulevard, hold. Present, colors. Ready, cut.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets break clear, the bombs bursting in air, they proved through the night that our flag was still, is still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? God bless America.
Cut. Right turn, arch. Forward, arch.
Please welcome Aisha Prime, from Executive Director of Baraka, Inc., from the Calvary Baptist Church, Reverend Maria Swearingen, and from Adas Israel Congregation, Sarah Krinsky.
I want to first thank you all for this opportunity and for being here. As we begin this prayer, I want to start with a verse from the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 186. That says, when my servants ask you concerning me, then know that I am indeed close to them. I listen to the supplications of every supplicant when he calls upon me. So I ask that we may pray together. In the name of God, most gracious and most merciful, to whom all praise and worship is due forever. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity for us to pray and to worship you together as one. We ask that you bless the mayor with a great wisdom, that you inspire her with a great justice, that you expand her heart and that you increase her in a great understanding, that you make her firm where she needs to be and compassionate where she needs to be, but always give her a mind and a heart that is with her people. We ask that you bless our youth to go to school in safety and security, and to grow up being able to fulfill their dreams in peace. We ask that you bless the families of this district. We ask that you please bless the communities, that you may guide them, keep them safe, that you may keep them safe from harm and from crime. Bless those who serve in the district. Give them a heart that is free from racial or religious bias. Give them a heart, dear God, that is filled with peace and justice. We ask that you bless this city to be rained down with your mercy, that you envelop us in your love and your kindness, and that you build a fortress of your protection around us, and that you bless us with the rivers of justice. It is in your name that we pray and ask it all, and that we completely depend on you. Amen, Amen, and Ashe.
Let us continue in prayer. O God, our help in ages past, God of our weary years and of our silent tears, God whose giving knows no ending, today we gather in a city bursting with promise and possibility, a city that dares to believe that when we are diverse, we are better. When we are in solidarity, we are better. When we lift up the struggling among us, we are better. When we live up to values rooted in justice and love, we are better. We give thanks for this city, for its people, for every school and hospital, every community center and museum, every public servant and line cook, every council member and pastor, every dream and every struggle. And as we give thanks for all that we are, we dare not ever forget all that has been lost along the way. Today we gather on land first loved by the Anacostan people who centuries ago were displaced and demolished by violence packaged as progress. Today we gather in a city long loved by the descendants of enslaved Africans who have taught us that the disease of white supremacy will not be healed with pithy slogans or Band-Aid policies. Today we gather in a city now loved by thousands of refugees and immigrants who remind us that any nation-state's neurotic need to protect its borders diminishes our humanity and makes in us a warring people. So today we come in celebration, in remembrance, in expectation, in grounded, truth-telling hope for all that this city and these people might be together. We especially lift up Mayor Bowser to you today. May her body and mind and spirit be held up by the hopes and dreams of those who live and move and have their being in the District of Columbia. Oh God, you know she faces many challenges, not least of which is a particular presidential resident in the city she serves and loves. Today we pray that you might infuse in her and in each member of this administration the spirit of Moses, who had to live close to Pharaoh too. And even though Moses did have to spend some time cajoling Pharaoh, negotiating with Pharaoh, trying to draft better policy with Pharaoh, one day when the spirit of a liberating God had had enough, all Moses could say anymore was, "Let my people go." Whether the groans of "let us go" come from our immigrant residents fearing the unjust practices of ICE, or our displaced residents calling out for justice housing, or our Muslim, Jewish, and Sikh residents asking if they can simply pray in peace, we trust that you will continue to infuse your liberating spirit within us so that we can be un santuario para todos, a sanctuary for all. O God of liberation, we ask that you help us in ages past. You have been our help in ages past, our hope in years to come. So let us march on till victory is won. Amen.
V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libenu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu la'ahava u'yira et shemecha. Enlighten our eyes with wisdom and insight. Help our souls cling to deeds of good and acts of kindness, and unite our hearts in love and awe of your great name. Adon Haniflaot, Master of Wonder, we praise you for renewing the world afresh each day, offering us infinite moments to step onto your path of creation and holiness. Zorea Tzedakot, God who emanates righteousness, we thank you for the wisdom and faithfulness of those who lead and guide, for instilling in their hearts courage and compassion, boldness and humility, discernment and sensitivity, for leading them to recognize themselves in the faces of those they serve. Matzmiach Yeshuot, God who brings about redemption, we ask you to bless and protect those who bring light and dignity to the needy and downtrodden. Support us in our quest to build a home, a city, and a world worthy of your presence. Please open our eyes to see not only what is broken, but also how we can repair. Expand our souls for the hard and holy work of loving one another across lines of neighborhood, lines of ward, lines of race, religion, or creed, and fill and fortify our hearts with recognition of our shared humanity, to unite all creatures to bring about your vision of truth, harmony, and justice in our blessed DC. Od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. May you and may we together bring wholeness and peace to us and to all the world. Amen.
The President of the University of the District of Columbia, President Dr. Ronald Mason.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Mason, and I'm the president of your University of the District of Columbia, the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital. It is my privilege and honor to introduce the members of our Board of Trustees who are present this evening. Chairman Christopher Bell, Dr. Esther Barrett-Zone, Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, James Dyke, Reginald Felton, Ken Grossinger, Gwendolyn Lewis, Sandra Kamnia, our student representative, Carolyn Rudd, Errol Schwartz, Barrington Scott, Jerome Shelton, and Dr. Anthony Tard. We also have from our foundation board, Mr. Mark Battle. I would also like to introduce the students, faculty, and staff of Firebird Nation who are in the house tonight. On their behalf, I welcome Mayor Bowser and her cabinet, Chairman Mendelson, and the members of the District Council, and all of you back home to our Van Ness campus for the State of the District Address. We thank all of you for your support of our Equity Imperative Strategic Plan, whose vision is that every student will achieve their highest level of human potential. We look forward to continued progress as we work together to ensure that the district has a resilient, equitable, and sustainable future. Whether by way of professional certifications or one of our 2 new PhD programs, or any credential in between, know that you can always count on Team UDC to provide transformative leaders to every level of the district's workforce. We look forward to the mayor's address, and once again, welcome to all of you.
Now, the mayor of the District of Columbia.
Good evening, DC. And welcome to my 5th State of the District address. It's great to be with you at our very own University of the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as the mayor of my hometown in our great city for 4 more years. As the first second-term mayor in over a decade, I am laser-focused on spreading prosperity and ensuring that every Washingtonian gets a fair shot and on a pathway to the middle class. I never dreamed of being mayor, but you never know what you can do until you put your best foot forward. And today, all 8 wards of our great city are my responsibility. And I take pride in my staff and the agencies who work hard to make DC a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family. After being sworn in 4 years ago, I pledged to bring a fresh start to the district. In my first budget, I devoted a historic $100 million to the Housing Production Trust Fund, putting an unparalleled number of affordable housing units into the pipeline. And of course, our youth remains a top priority, which is why I made sure to build on the legacy that the Mayor for Life, Muriel Berry, created. And I expanded the Muriel Berry Youth Employment Program to include youth ages 22 through 24. I also made investments to ensure that kids can ride free all over the city. And together, we will make sure that our city is a city of inclusion and opportunity, no matter if you've been here for 5 minutes or 5 generations. Are you with me? Can I depend on you? My name is Vinay Biddix, and I am 12 years old. I want to thank Mrs. Cora Masters-Berry and the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center for allowing me to be a part of Blacks in Wax, where I get to study and personify the leaders who I look up to, like Mayor Muriel Bowser. For I was one of those 8-year-old girls who Mayor Bowser always speaks of. And now I am honored to introduce the real mayor of the District of Columbia, Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. How about little Vinay? Let's give her a big round of applause. And I want to thank her for that fantastic introduction. I was blown away at last year's Blacks in Wax, where I got to see Vinay perform for the first time. And I am so glad that you all got a chance to just get a glimpse of how talented our young people are. She nailed it, and all the kids nail it each and every year in Blacks in Wax. Please give her another round of applause. It's good to be back here at the University of the District of Columbia, isn't it? And I want to start by recognizing my colleagues on the Council of the District of Columbia who are here tonight. And of course, I want to acknowledge our warrior on the Hill, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. It's been certainly a few years now that the Congresswoman, the Council, Attorney General Carl Racine, and I have been working together to keep the District of Columbia moving forward in this challenging political environment. In 2016, I know DC was really hoping for and expecting a different outcome. We came out and we made our voices heard. You came out strong for DC statehood, a new constitution, and boundaries that define a federal enclave. But things at the top of the ticket didn't quite go as we had hoped for. And so here we are. 2 years ago, at my State of the District address, I called on the president to work with DC on a range of issues that would make our city and our nation stronger. But for progress on revitalizing Franklin Park, I could stand here and recite the exact same list. Over these past 2 years, instead of investments in infrastructure, housing, and schools, we've gotten tweets, parade plans, and shutdowns. Locally, though, we stood by our DC values. When the president pushed and passed a tax plan that was designed to help the rich get richer while diverting funding from critical programs, locally, we went in a different direction. Together, our community has made big investments in protecting our most vulnerable neighbors and giving more Washingtonians a fair shot at a pathway to the middle class. In my upcoming budget, we continue these investments. I want you to know that I've tried in good faith to work with the current federal administration, and I will continue to do so. Sometimes it means sitting across from the president himself and telling him who we are, what we believe, and where we are heading as a city. Like I've said before, I will sit across from the president so you don't have to. Just last week, I was at the White House to meet with the president's team about how the district's backlog of judges is holding up some of our efforts to build a safer, stronger DC, to construct more housing, and to revitalize more neighborhoods. Chief Judge Blackburn-Rigsby and Judge Morin are the best, but they can't do it all by themselves. They can't fill those seats by themselves. While I was at the White House, I had a chance to drop into the Oval Office. I took the opportunity to reframe how the president thinks about honoring our servicemen and women, our veterans. There are more than 1 million veterans who live in this region. You may have heard that the president has considered a military parade to honor them. I see another way. I see another way to show them that we care by building a new world-class medical facility that provides the services and opportunities and health care that our soldiers deserve. Congresswoman Norton will tell you, our VA hospital needs immediate attention. Let's build a new one. A military parade will last a day, while a new veterans hospital will make lasting change. The truth is, I will work with anyone who wants to help us give more Washingtonians a fair shot. And while I will continue working with this administration, it is time to think about our collective future. We've got to start looking ahead at the national debate in 2020. Right now, the district is slated to vote dead last in the 2020 presidential primary schedule. We know what the Bible says. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. But in the presidential primaries, the last, well, they're just last. So tonight, I call on the council to help us get DC in the game by moving our 2020 primary up from June to April. Voting last sends the wrong message. It reinforces the incorrect notion that since DC is an estate, therefore we don't matter. We shouldn't be taken seriously. It reinforces the notion that we can be taken for granted or discarded. We've seen what happens when Americans are dismissed, discounted, and forgotten. For the next year, my plan is to plant both feet on the floor, and I know you'll be with me, set our shoulders straight, and tell this administration and those who want to lead the next one that the 702,000 men, women, and children who call DC home, we will have a voice, and you will hear us. You will hear us tell you about how we are an urban jurisdiction getting it right. You will hear us tell you that our policies are improving education, reducing crime, increasing employment, greening our infrastructure, welcoming diversity, and creating a city where everyone has a pathway to the middle class. But you will also hear us demand more of the White House, and in this crowded field of candidates, those who want to be in the White House in the next term. There is no doubt about it. In 2019, the state of the district is strong. But with a friend in the White House and a president who believes in the promise of a strong middle class, we can be even stronger. I look forward to engaging candidates on how their policy platforms will help America's cities. We've made huge investments in the neighborhoods that need them the most. We funded, built, and cut the ribbon at the entertainment and sports arena in Congress Heights. We funded and cut the ribbon on the new Bus Boys and Poets in Anacostia. But because we believe that Ward 8 should have every opportunity to rise, we aren't stopping there. Last fall, I introduced the very first TIF in Ward 8. That means a $60 million investment for the new home of a 200-person government agency, a hotel, and other amenities right on Martin Luther King Avenue. With each investment, more jobs and new opportunities for residents of Ward 8 and beyond. And if we're going to ensure residents in the East End have what residents enjoy in the West End, we need to realize every tool we can. Former Newark Mayor, now Senator and presidential candidate Cory Booker has been a leader on creating one such tool. And that tool is opportunity zones. The senator is right when he says that genius in this country is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. By implementing opportunity zones, we can grow our housing, jobs, and amenities in areas of DC that have been too often overlooked. That's why I established 18 out of the 25 opportunity zones in Wards 7 and 8. I also look forward to engaging candidates like Mayor Pete from South Bend. I know I'm biased as a fellow mayor, but I quite like the idea of having a president who understands the importance of not just talking about infrastructure, but actually investing in infrastructure. And Senator Kamala Harris, who like us, is looking at how we can use tax credits and cash payments to recognize and reduce the financial strain middle-class families in our nation are feeling. But what we want to know is how these candidates will work for Washingtonians. Of course, our values did not change on Election Day in 2016, nor did the fact that Washington, D.C. can manage our jurisdiction as well as any jurisdiction in the nation. It was, after all, through our own fiscal responsibility, our commitment to good government, and the responsible leadership of public servants like Councilmember Evans and Chief Financial Officer Jeff DeWitt that in less than 2 decades, our city went from a federal control board to a AAA bond rating. As Chairman Phil Mendelson will tell you, our financial prudence is the envy of state legislatures and city councils around the country. But as I have said before, we are resilient, but we are not financially tsunami-proof. And as we continue through budget season, we must resist the temptation to write checks now that we cannot cash in recessionary times. And while we look ahead to 2020, we cannot wait for a president to solve our most pressing challenges. We are going to keep building on our successes and pushing for what we believe in. 20 years ago, a lot of families, even families who lived here for generations, fled when it was time to send their children to school. Now it is quite the opposite. Our pre-K program is attracting families to our city, and a much improved school system is keeping them here. As more families continue to enroll in our public schools with Chancellor Louis Fairby at the helm, and with a steady oversight of our public charter schools, we will work with Councilmember Grasso and our partners on the council, school communities, and our school board to ensure that residents in all 8 wards have access to a high-quality public school. We know it starts with a quality teacher in every classroom, but they too need the latest tools to capture our students' attention and instill a lifelong love of learning. So with this budget, we will make a big down payment on what our community has asked for: 1 device for every student. With $4.6 million for new technology in our schools, we will ensure that each 3rd, 6th, and 9th grader has a new laptop or tablet. We're also going to reshape vocational offerings at our high schools so that more students graduate prepared for good-paying jobs that allow them to stay and raise their families right here in the district. And as our students prepare for college, President Mason will tell you, as he reminded us, that UDC should be the first choice 2-year and 4-year institutions for DC's best and brightest. And to build on our increased UDC investment in the last budget, we are providing funding for UDC to acquire 4250 Connecticut Avenue and to begin to revitalize its student-centered campus right here in Van Ness. But as we are solving the problem of keeping families in the city, we are confronted with the challenge of making it affordable to do so. Over the past 4 years, we've continued the work of making childcare both more affordable and accessible by expanding the number of seats available. A few years back, I visited about 20 schools, one Saturday, I think, before I finalized my capital budget. One of these schools that I visited was shuttered. And it was the hope of DCPS at the time to reopen Randall Highlands, the old Randall Highlands in Ward 7. That year, I was disappointed that we could not move forward with reopening the school as an early child care center. This year, though, with Hillcrest and Penn Branch bustling with young families, we can and we will. And Councilmember Allen, we will do the same for babies and children in Rosedale and Capitol Hill at the old minor school. And Kenyon McDuffie, we've heard loud and clear from communities in Ward 5, and we will be able to do the same at the old Thurgood Marshall School. Last year, I also created the Early Learning Tax Credit, which many families found out about this tax season, with a credit of up to $1,000 per child enrolled in a DC licensed child care center. This was created as a one-time credit, but in the budget I'm sending to the council this week, we will make the Early Learning Tax Credit permanent. We know that policies that support working families benefit our entire community. That's why I am hopeful to see Julian Castro and Senator Elizabeth Warren talking about expanding pre-K universally and child care too. Here in DC, we're going to keep building on our successes and pushing for what we believe in other ways too. We are looking for a 2020 candidate who will take up the fight for a national paid family leave policy. A national policy is a solution that ensures that all who fund it benefit from it, and it keeps cities like ours in DC from bearing the cost for the whole region. These are the ways we make DC a place where families are able to stay and thrive. And there are other ways that we are making DC more affordable for families too. Coming into office, one of the first things I did was expand a program I created when I was on the council, the Kids Ride Free program. By adding metro trains as well as buses, every year we are able to put hundreds of dollars back in the pockets of DC families. Out of school time is another major concern for parents. So we've made big investments in our summer camp programs to make them both more affordable and accessible by adding 1,000 new slots at 8 new sites this summer. We've upgraded our rec centers, and the renaissance of our library system is nearly complete. And certainly in 2020, with the reopening of Martin Luther King Library, it's an accomplishment we can all be very proud of. As you heard from Vinay, coming into office, I expanded the summer youth program to include youth ages 22 to 24. And in the coming budget, I am proud to raise their wage. And I know that we can work with Councilmember Silverman to make sure this gets done in this budget season. And speaking of raising wages, on July 1st, we will see the minimum raise rise to $14 an hour in Washington, D.C. And in one more year, together, we will win the fight for 15 as the minimum wage rate rises to $15 per hour, something we can all be proud of. Last year, with help from Councilmember Anita Bonds, we put more money back into the pockets of Washingtonians by eliminating the pink tax. You know, the pink tax on menstrual hygiene products, it's gone. In 2019, we're going to do the same for diapers. We know that those baby costs, diaper costs, child care costs, summer camp costs, pre-school, after-school costs, they add up, don't they? So eliminating the diaper tax is one more way we can make it more affordable to raise children right in DC, one pack of diapers at a time. For Fair Shot February, we made the DC circulator free. You liked it so much, we did it again in March. And over the past few weeks, workers at hotels, restaurants, and shops have stopped me at the checkout counters, at the dinners, telling me how much they appreciated the DC circulator being free. We may not think about it because it's just $1 each way, $2 a day, but for a working person, it adds up. And so we went back to our budget books to see what else we could do. And I'm proud to say that we will make the DC circulator free from now on. But as much as we love the circulator, streetcar, and Capital Bike Share, we also know that they are no replacement for Metro. We have always prioritized safety and reliability and building the capacity at Metro. So now we need a firm commitment from Metro that they will return to late night hours and that they will not become a system that only caters to white-collar workers commuting from the suburbs. We're not going to replace Metro with Uber and Lyft because we can't move our region forward by further clogging our roads. We need a Metro system that works as hard as our workforce and stays open as late as our region. DC led the region in getting dedicated funding for Metro. And in the coming budget, we will double down on our commitment to public transportation with a $122 million investment in a new K Street Northwest Transitway. This infrastructure investment will ensure that buses, bikes, and cars can safely share the road and move through downtown DC. We know a resilient and sustainable public transportation system is the key to building a resilient and sustainable city. So as the 2020 candidates ask for our support, these are the details we're looking for in DC. A candidate who knows how much work cities like ours have put in to remaining affordable, but we also know we can't do it alone. We need a candidate who understands, for example, that the national housing crisis is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It's an American issue, and we must act with urgency to solve it. We know the #1 issue on the minds of Washingtonians is affordable housing. Rising housing costs have created new challenges for homeowners and renters alike, particularly those on fixed incomes and those who are struggling to make ends meet. Thank you. You probably want to hear what I'm going to say next, don't you? Do you want to hear about affordable housing in the district? Thank you for coming, but I know you want to hear what's coming next. You're going to miss a wonderful affordable housing plan. So one reason for this struggle is that with higher property values come, thank you. Let's hear about affordable housing. Let's encourage our friends to listen for a while. Let's encourage our friends to hear about an affordable housing plan. So one reason, as I was saying, we want to hear what's going on. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. So let's talk about affordable housing. One reason that people are struggling is that with higher property values have come higher taxes. And I hear it from seniors all the time. They tell me, Mayor, my grandkids hear how much my house is worth and they think I'm rich. But I'm not, and I need help. You know how the saying goes, I'm house rich, but I'm cash poor. And one way we've helped seniors is through our Safe at Home program. Through Safe at Home, we've made modifications and adaptations to the homes of more than 1,200 seniors in our city. It's a successful program, and I'm proud that in my coming budget, we're increasing our investment in Safe at Home by $2 million. And last year, for example, we put a cap on the amount property taxes can go up for eligible seniors, slashing the 10% increase cap to 5%. And I know Councilmember Brandon Todd had the right idea with the legislation he introduced this year to provide relief to more middle-income residents on their property taxes. And if the federal government shutdown didn't cost us $47 million, we could have funded this important relief this year. But we should come back to it soon, because our families who are feeling the pinch on their property taxes are feeling the pinch in ways that may prevent them from living out their older years in their homes. It's not just homeowners who are feeling the affordability pinch. It's also low and moderate income renters. So this budget season, I charged my team with finding solutions that work for everyone, homeowners and renters alike. At the urging of Councilmember Evans, we're expanding the Schedule H tax credits to provide more relief for low and moderate income renters and homeowners to offset rising property taxes. We'll do this by both increasing the income ceiling, at the same time increasing the maximum credit by nearly $200. Again, this is how we will help families stay in DC. But as I said last week at the National League of Cities, places like DC can't do this alone, and we need the federal government to be our partner, which is why I'm hopeful to see Senator Harris and Booker putting forth plans that create credits for renters who pay more than 30% of their income toward housing. And Senator Warren, who has a plan to use a down payment assistance program that doesn't just acknowledge the racist redlining policies of the past, but actually takes steps to address and correct their long-term impacts. The type of plans they've introduced will complement the work we're doing locally to both end homelessness and create more affordable housing. As many of you already know, 3 years ago, we implemented Homeward DC, our plan to make homelessness in the district rare, brief, and non-recurring. While there is more work to do, we have made tremendous progress. We've driven down homelessness across the city by 17%, including a 40% reduction in family homelessness. Over 4,600 families have exited shelter to permanent housing, and nearly 4,900 single adults have exited the streets or shelter to homes of their own. Imagine what that actually means for people who have experienced significant trauma in their life. Thank you. No, I want everybody to hear about ending homelessness. Imagine what that means, especially for people who have experienced trauma. It means that they have a door that they can lock of their own, a space to call their own, things many of us take for granted each and every day. And tonight, religion may rest in our hearts and minds because together we close DC General once and for all. But I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau, and she reminds us daily that we have more to do. And with a new $26 million investment in Homeward DC and a new $11 million investment in our short-term family housing programs, we will move more of our most vulnerable residents into safe, permanent, and dignified housing. Affordable housing isn't just a problem for our most vulnerable residents, though. It affects our entire community. Thank you for joining us. You might want to settle down so we can hear about the commitments. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a lot of DC residents who have a lot to say, and we're certainly always available to listen. And we certainly also understand that many people aren't enjoying the same prosperity that we want for our city. And what we're talking about today, exactly what we're talking about today, is how we share that prosperity. I pledged coming into office that I would spend $100 million annually, more per capita than any other jurisdiction in the nation, to create and preserve affordable housing. And that's exactly what we did every single year. And it paid off to the tune of 7,200 affordable units. Affordable housing units like those that we built at Plaza West, the district's first ever affordable housing for grandparents raising their grandchildren, like Miss Olivia Chase. Miss Chase helped us cut the ribbon on Plaza West and was one of the first grandparents to move in. But I want to talk about somebody else, Miss Chase's grandson, Richard. Richard is always by her side. He's also very active in making his city a better place, from testifying in front of the council to joining us at parades. He may be young, and Olivia may be seasoned, but they are the heart of why we are here tonight. We're lucky to have him and his grandma in our city, and that's why we fight so hard for families like hers. When I started my second term, I said we have to think and act bigger and bolder. I challenged us to ask ourselves, what would we do if we weren't afraid to fail? In a city as prosperous as ours, it is our responsibility to decide how and when we adjust our policies to ensure that everyone living and doing business in the district is giving and getting their fair share. These have been and continue to be very good times for Washington, D.C. A city that works for both residents and businesses. In the coming fiscal year, we're asking our commercial property owners to share some of the upside. With this budget, we will capture more from commercial real estate transactions and therefore be able to invest more in affordable housing. First and foremost, we will increase our investment in the Housing Production Trust Fund by 30% to increase it to $130 million. Next, we will increase our annual investment in the Housing Preservation Fund from $10 million to $15 million, which will yield an additional $45 million in private investment. This means in the coming budget, we can and will invest nearly $200 million in the production and preservation of affordable housing in the district. I also said that we won't reach our ambitious housing goals, that's 36,000 new units by 2025, with our existing tools. So we've created a new tool, a $20 million workforce housing fund that will leverage private sector investment of nearly $200 million, all of which will be spent to create and preserve housing for our teachers, our police officers, firefighters, and janitors, and social workers, and everyone else who has a good job but also needs to be able to find an affordable home. The hardest part of the housing crisis is that it's not totally within our control. Right now, for example, 2,000 units of affordable housing are stuck in frivolous litigation. And the truth is, we cannot afford to let any untapped land in our city go to waste. That includes the campus at the shuttered RFK Stadium, which now, as most of you know, is nothing more than a vast, desolate parking lot. It may be the only national parking lot, in fact, dedicated to asphalt. But I'm pleased to announce tonight that in the coming days, and I have her permission to say this, Congresswoman Norton will introduce legislation to fully convey the RFK Stadium campus to the District of Columbia at fair market value. We have shown that we have the ability, the desire, and the need to reimagine and reinvigorate transferred federal land. much like we're doing at Walter Reed, Hill East, and St. Elizabeth's. To be clear, there is no deal to bring a professional sports team to that site. Whether a stadium or a sports arena is included in the reimagined RFK campus is a debate for a future date, which, as a city, we will decide for ourselves. But the transfer of the RFK campus is not my only legislative priority for this Congress. We also need Congress to ensure that DC TAG gets fully funded so that we can continue providing families up to $10,000 per year towards their college education, and to reauthorize SOAR as we continue making historic investments in our elementary, middle, and high schools. Last week, the House Democrats introduced H.R. 6. Thank you, House Democrats. The Dream and Promise Act. The bill would give pathways to citizenship for dreamers and those who live here under temporary protected status. This matters for many of our Salvadoran, Guatemalan, and Haitian neighbors, so it should matter to our 2020 candidates. When this president came into office, I created the Immigrant Justice Legal Services Grant Program, which helps protect and advance the rights of immigrants in our city. At the budget engagement forums last month, I was moved by the residents who came out consistently and asked for us to do more for our neighbors. So in this budget together, we will increase funding for the Immigrant Justice Grant Program from $900,000 to $2.5 million. And by moving the Dream and Promise Act forward, Congress can ensure that taxpayer dollars are building on our local efforts and being used to tackle real national emergencies, not trumped up ones. Real emergencies like climate change, which we're tackling head on here in DC with Councilmember Mary Chay's groundbreaking clean energy legislation. Thank you, Councilmember. And emergencies that hit even closer to home, like the nationwide opioid crisis, or the fact that last year, nearly 40,000 people in our nation died of gun violence. More than 100 of those people lived right here in DC. As we know, over the past year, our city has experienced a tragic spike in fatal violence. While overall crime has decreased, the number of people shot in our city has stayed frustratingly steady for several years. And over time, these shootings have become more fatal. People are getting shot at closer range, there have been more shots fired, and it's still much too easy for people, including our youngest, to get their hands on powerful firearms. We know that to end this violence, we have to be good at both policing and healing. My upcoming budget addresses both by continuing to fund efforts to get our police forces up to 4,000, including an innovative new partnership between MPD and UDC, while also making big investments in programs that prevent violence, reduce recidivism, and address trauma. Congress's bipartisan First Step Act has already started moving our criminal justice system in a new and better direction. But we must, at both the federal and local level, build on these reforms. Tonight, I call on the council to move forward with legislation to reform the district's record sealing process and give more Washingtonians the fair shot they need. I share Councilmember Robert White's concern, and we know that a fair shot often means providing a second chance. By passing the Second Chance Amendment Act of 2019, we can remove barriers to housing, education, and employment for some residents and build a safer, stronger city for all. We know that Councilmember White and Councilmember Gray have introduced an expungement measure. Our returning citizens and their families deserve a vote on these bills too. To paraphrase Councilmember White, we can no longer stand here. We must all do something to give our returning citizens a fair shot. Congress, too, must do better and more to protect America from gun violence. Guns travel across state lines, and so do the people who use them. We need federal action, and we need it now. Perhaps in D.C., one of the most frustrating aspects of the gun control debate, or lack of debate, is how powerless we are to make our voices heard. When Congress votes on common sense gun reforms, we don't have a single vote representing D.C. values. So tonight, as I close, I want to urge every single person in this room and every single person watching to continue our fight for D.C. statehood. Momentum for D.C. statehood is at an all-time high. Our Congresswoman has secured over 200 co-sponsors for our statehood bill. And this month, Congress endorsed D.C. statehood for the first time ever. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer have formally endorsed D.C. statehood. Every Democrat in the DMV region, save one, has endorsed D.C. statehood. And so we know the crowded field of candidates for 2020 have also put D.C. statehood on the tops of their list. In 2016, we secured the inclusion of D.C. statehood in the Democratic platform, and now I will continue to encourage the D.C. GOP to work with us to ensure that D.C. is treated exactly like Puerto Rico in the Republican platform, too. Working with Congresswoman Norton, Chairman Mendelson, our shadow delegation, and the D.C. Statehood Coalition, we will continue to demand our fundamental rights as American citizens. When I traveled to Selma earlier this month, I was reminded of the fighting spirit of the great American John Lewis, the spirit that has compelled generations of civil rights leaders, even in the face of great adversity, to press on, to demand better of our country, and to believe that anything is possible. By channeling this courage in this fight, we will once and for all fix the great American injustice happening right here in the nation's capital. DC, it is my great honor to get to be mayor of my hometown, to come before you each year to update you on our progress and to make clear our expectations and hopes for the future. Together, we will press on, and because we will stick together, the state of the district will remain strong. Thank you, and God bless the District of Columbia.